monitoring by the global money laundering and terrorist financing watchdog. So what does this mean for companies doing business with international counterparts? We're joined by Krevania, who is the Senior Associate in the Construction and Engineering and Corporate Investigation sectors in the Dispute Resolution Practice at Cliff Decker Hofmeyer. Thank you very much for your time this morning, Krevania. So what exactly does this mean for us as South Africa, this grey listing that everybody has been lamenting over since late last year?
What it means for South Africa is that our country as a jurisdiction is being placed under increased monitoring. It means that our financial system is not compliant with international standards relating to anti-money laundering and the terrorist financing. For that reason, FATF has placed us on the grey list. And in other words, it means that South Africa as a country has identified, along with FATF, certain concerns and inadequacies relating to its financial systems, and is taking steps to remedy them.
Yeah, with that, what are the potential implications that now come with us being grey listed as a country? How bad are those implications?
Well, as we know, perception is everything. And the implications will rely heavily on whether South Africa is seen to be addressing these deficiencies. I think we can agree that South Africa has taken legislative steps to rectify the inadequacies. However, it's going to be the enforcement and the rollout of those steps in coming years that will be critical in identifying the extent of impact to the South African systems. There will definitely be an increase in transactional and administrative costs and funding costs for banks, as well as individuals that are South African trying to transact with foreign financial institutions.
So we did see that there were two legislative pieces that were put through by National Treasury at the end of last year to try and curb the grey listing. But what other kind of interventions do we need to see coming through from the government so that we are removed from that grey list as soon as possible?
I think that's a great question. And to take an example from other countries that have also been similarly grey listed, it would be important for there to be a strategic and coordinated response from levels of government as well as law enforcement authorities to show that they are really proactively trying to investigate offenses of money laundering and the financing of terrorism. And it's that coordinated approach and coordinated response to these serious cases of corruption that is going to see South Africa maneuver itself out of the grey list and address those inadequacies that were identified by FATF.
Yeah, and I mean, in the meantime, we're going to see, or what will come out is that there are challenges that are faced by different law enforcement agencies that perhaps led us to this place in the first place. So that oversight within law enforcement agencies is also going to be very important when it comes to putting in those interventions to make sure that we are out in the shortest time possible.
Absolutely, and I think we can, be hopeful that there's going to be compliance, especially from the side of the Financial Intelligence Center, that they will be seeking to roll out implementation of their newly promulgated policies in terms of the FEEC Act. And I think that there have been reports of law enforcement agencies such as the Hawks increasing capacitation, upskilling, and increasing their sort of capacity to investigate these offenses. And that's really the key steps in moving us off the grey list.
You mentioned earlier that financial institutions are going to be one of the few institutions that feel this the most. But can they and other businesses assist in perhaps putting through those interventions and saving South Africa, if you will, from the dire effects of a grey listing?
Absolutely. I think that it's definitely going to be a hand-in-hand exercise between the law enforcement agencies on the one hand and the accountable institutions identified in terms of FEEC, which now include a further list of entities and has been broadened in the recent amendments. So it's going to be, on the one hand, implementation and enforcement of the newly promulgated laws, as well as being compliant with that process and seeking compliance on the side of the accountable institutions.
Thank you very much for those insights. That is Krevania Pillay from Cliff Decker-Hofmeyer joining us to speak about the grey listing, what it means, the implications and the interventions that have to be put in place by government to